Hello and welcome to another legendary episode of the Stripping the Dipping podcast. You're joined by your usual co-host, the MDM, the modern day Morgan Freeman. It's your boy AMG Dens, and as always on the Stripping the Dipping podcast, we love to explore the world of motorsport, high and low, near and far, and all the dynamics in between. And today we've got a really awesome guest that's going to give us a very unique perspective of NASCAR through his lens. See what I did there? It's the one and only Al Wheeler. Al, how's it going, man?
Hey, pretty good. How about you?
Yeah, oh man, I'm super excited to have you on today, man. When Jorgy reached out to me a couple of weeks ago and she told me about you making an appearance on the show, I was super excited, because I don't know so much about NASCAR, and I'm sure that you're gonna basically educate our fans and kind of like get them into the world of it as well. But when you hear about Joe Gibbs Racing, that is one of the prominent names, in the sports and has been for some time. So when you think of like
Yeah, for
Denny
sure.
Hamlin, the Bush brothers and stuff like that as well.
Yep,
There's
yep.
so much to it. So I'm really excited, man. But Al, what have you been up to recently? I know I just asked off stream, but for our listeners, could you give them a perspective of what you do and like what life has been like on the road, traveling, following the sport?
Yeah, like you said, I work at Joe Gibbs Racing. I'm one of our like content capture people. So primarily for me, it's photos, but video as well. It's a 38 race season, so 38 weekends a year from let's see, the end of January to the first weekend in November. Uh, it's pretty grueling. We have one off weekend, which was Father's Day this year. So, it's June or no, yeah, June, and then it just keeps going. So last week we're in Talladega actually, which is a super speedway. Week before that we were in Texas. Week before that was Bristol. So yeah, we're all over the place, all over the country.
Wow, that sounds really relentless, Al. And we were just talking about that off air too. Like, in the world of Formula One, people get up in arms when they hear about obviously just like one or like, 23, 24 races in the season or 25. So 38 is just completely on a different scale. And I think another thing to kind of
Yeah.
point out at this early part of the podcast, is that with NASCAR, I guess there's that reputation, that kind of ignorant reputation that a lot of Europeans like ourselves have that it's this kind of like speedways, but it's really not. NASCAR has become so technical over the years. There's been the introduction to a lot of kind of like one-off special races. We're talking about like the Dirt Coliseum and also the Roval,
Yep.
which we'll discuss as well. And also as well too, just like this year, there's actually a new generation of NASCAR Cup car kind of as well, with the new
Yep. Yep.
chassis, the new emphasis on the aero and the kind of calisthenics with the suspension and how that works with the new tires as well. So it's a really exciting time, and we've seen so many races just go to the wire, and no two races are like the same. We have different winners every single kind of race as well, I imagine.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. This year's definitely been really different because it's kind of leveled the playing field, I guess you could say. Um,
Hmm.
with this new car, it basically shows up to our shop in parts and pieces, all from different manufacturers, and then our guys down on the shop floor put it together. So I think in years previous, before we had this car, I think the teams built it's upwards of 90% of the parts for the cars.
Hmm.
So basically, our shop, we were making everything from, the roll cage, uh, the suspension parts, like control arms, wishbones, stuff like that. Um, and you're talking, we made maybe 20 to 15% of the parts on the car. Everything else is a spec part that all the other teams in NASCAR have. So
Hmm.
NASCAR tried to essentially take the teams that didn't have a lot of money and make them able to compete with the teams that had a lot of money. So that was their end goal. You still kind of have the bigger teams do pretty well, like Hendrick Motorsports with Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, William Byron, Alex Bowman. They're still really good, and it's more kind of I think the knowledge and the data you have at your hands. But then you've also seen teams like Richard Childress Racing, who haven't won a Cup race. I think their last Cup win before this season might have been 2018, 2019, and now this year they've won 3 races. So
Wow.
it's definitely leveled the playing field a lot, like you said. You even have Roush, Fenway Racing, or sorry, Roush Fenway Kozlowski Racing. And they won Bristol just a couple weeks ago. And Roush's last win, same thing, probably 2018, 2019. So it's definitely leveled the playing field a lot.
That's really interesting, Al. And actually on the topic of which, too, a certain sport, F1, has been in the kind of like news lately because there's been a whole thing about cost cap and basically
Yeah, yep.
them trying to achieve a similar thing in their own way. But then we're gonna find out probably tomorrow, as this podcast is being recorded, that one of the teams may have been a bit naughty and may have not stuck to the rules they should have, or done something in the spirit of the rules. So that is kind of one way you can do it, but I think the way that you guys have done it in the kind of NASCAR world is probably the more fairer and actually maybe the more easier way to do it in that sense. I guess, it's still kind of different because in F1, there's a huge kind of emphasis on manufacturers and stuff like that too. But
Yep.
in a
Yeah.
way, I think, in NASCAR as well, you could make that argument too because you've got Toyota, you've got Chevrolet, you've got Ford. There's just so many different manufacturers in that regard as well, and that kind of like style and department too.
Yeah, yeah, and the manufacturers play an interesting role too because so our team is one of two Toyota teams. The other team is 2311 Racing, and one of our drivers, Denny Hamlin, owns that with Michael Jordan, the basketball player.
Of
And
course.
so we share a lot of data with them and stuff. They have a technical alliance with us. Um, so it's kind of we're almost one whole team with six cars, but still two. But we share all our data with them. Um, so there's only six Toyotas on the grid, where Chevy has a huge amount of cars on the grid, but each Chevy team kind of does their own thing in a way. So there's Hendrick Motorsports, and they have alliances with other teams, and then there's Richard Childress Racing, and they have alliances with other teams as well. But it's up to them to kind of pick and share who they're going to share their data with. Um, and so, yes, there are manufacturers, and they do help each team and share wind tunnel data and stuff like that. But as far as each individual team, that's different. So you do have manufacturers, but at the same time, it's it's a little different. But for the most part, yeah, it's the same branding on the cars and stuff like that.
Of course, and also as well to think about as well, Al, you mentioned like how the working practices apply in relation to the data and also how the teams go about strategizing. But one thing I also found quite interesting, in just watching NASCAR loosely this year and trying to get into it a bit more, is just how, in particular with Toyota and you guys, it seems like a lot of the Toyota runners kind of almost in some cases run together as a pack, and you'll see them running a high line or trying to help each other, like grab a toe and progress through the field and stuff like that as well. It's a really unique dynamic, you could say, in comparison to maybe other motorsporting series. Like, what would your comments be on that?
Yeah, so I mean, this last weekend was a perfect example with Talladega. So super speedway racing is definitely it's a team sport up until about the last three laps. Other tracks,
Mhm.
it's not so much. Uh, it's not so important that they work together all the time. But with super speedways, say you have a 60 lap green flag run, well, your tires and maybe fuel are only good for 30 laps. So somewhere in those 60 laps, you're going to have to pit. But if you come just by yourself as one car and then go back out, you're not going to have the draft of the other cars, and so you're just going to get lapped with probably within about 10 laps. The big field of cars is going to come back past you. So that's why you see so many teams like ours, all the Toyotas come together at the same time, so that you can get that toe and kind of catch back up to the pack. And that way, when everybody else kind of cycles through, the green flag stops. It's your hopefully your strategy is played out, and that you are either in the front of the pack or in the back, wherever you want to be, if you're trying to play it safe or if you're trying to get aggressive and get stage points. Whereas other tracks like Texas, everyone's got their own strategy. It's not, it's not team dependent. It's not manufacturer dependent. Um, and it's just whatever the crew chief of that one car thinks, hey, maybe a caution's going to come out in the next 30 laps, but we want tires now, and we can jump it, and then we'll pit next time around and get tires and fuel. So stuff like that, there's so much strategy to it as far as being able to take, just fuel or just tires, 2 tires, 4 tires. Do you take tires on the right side of the car? Do you take tires on the left side of the car? Do you wait for fuel to try and fill the car up to make it to the end of the stage or through to the next caution potentially? So there's definitely a lot of the strategy is very interesting to it. You wouldn't think it just because it's not like F1 where maybe you have 1 or 2 stops, you have 3 or 4. But when the cautions come out, makes such a big difference, especially in this playoff format where there's points to be gained just based on where you finish in the stage, if you win the stage, and that makes a huge difference. It's really complex and it's really hard to keep track of. I don't really understand it that well myself. So.
Well, how are you giving me some confidence there too, man? Because for me too, like when I was trying to follow this sport at the beginning of the year, I was like, wow, like it's actually quite dynamic. And in a way, it's not been done where it's artificial or it feels like a rule's been created just basically for the sake of the entertainment. Certain other sports which have been doing. I'm throwing a lot of shade on that particular
Yeah.
sport, but we'll come to them in a second.
Yeah.
But no, like with NASCAR, it's actually refreshing. And I've had a similar kind of revelation with even the IndyCar guys this season and seeing how strategy plays for them and watching the finale of their final race at Laguna Seca and how like such a worn track surface meant that some of the guys were doing a 4-stop race. And I was like, that's crazy for like an open wheel series, let alone obviously coming back to NASCAR where you've got like obviously a enclosed car with a chassis and bigger tires and almost running it in that sense too. But either way, Al, obviously this podcast is not just about the sport, but also we want to know more about the man behind the lens himself, Al Wheeler. So bro, like, could for our listeners at home, could you tell us more about your initial early memories of motorsport and like, was there a particular series you were really digging before you got into like following NASCAR and being part of the Joe Gibbs Racing team, for example?
Yeah. So I can give you a little bit of how I got into it, I guess. So I was in high school, and so I grew up in Colorado, in the United States for your international listeners. And I lived really close to the road for the Pikes Peak International Hill Climb. And I had a really good friend whose dad was the race director. And so we would go to that every summer. If you don't know what the Pikes Peak Hill Climb is, it's a 14,000 foot mountain. I don't know what that is in meters. Is it 6? No, it's not 6,000 meters. Anywho, they race up, basically it's a toll road for tourists all year long, but for 1 day a year, they close it off and they race from about 8 miles up the road all the way to the top. And it's about 12.6 miles. And so just going to that as like a kid in high school, that kind of got me started in racing. And then I got kind of into Formula Drift for a little bit. And then in college, I took like a photography class, and I was just, it'd be great to go to the hill climb and take some pictures. So the hill climb's a week-long race. There's practice Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Saturday's off. Sunday is race day. And so go up there for the week and just take photos. And I actually really liked it a lot. And so that's kind of how I got into that. And that's kind of what hooked me in. I was like, man, I would really love to do motorsports photography for a job. And then when I was in college, I had a classmate who was a year ahead of me. And I went to school in Phoenix, Arizona. And he got a job at the racetrack, the Phoenix Raceway out there. It's just a NASCAR track. They run some IndyCar races there occasionally. And they came to one of my classes and spoke, and I said, hey, I'd love to, come shoot some content for you guys. If you'd have me, I'll do it for free. This is trying to for a career. And so they invited me out the first time, and it was a NASCAR race. And I'd never really watched NASCAR as a kid growing up. Always thought it was just, a bunch of rednecks running in circles. And I went out there. And so they had me out A couple times I shot an IndyCar race out there. I'm a massive IndyCar fan. I think that's probably my favorite form of racing. Actually, F1 and IndyCar probably about even. But so I went out there, shot that, and I met at one of the races. I met a kid that worked for one of the teams, and we just followed each other on Instagram, and a couple months go by. I messaged him. I said, "Hey, if you ever need any help, if you can't be in two places at once, let me know." And he was like, "Oh, we have that locked down for the year, kind of everything in advance. But he's like, if anything opens up, I'll let you know." Well, then maybe another month goes by, and he messaged me again, just kind of out of the blue, and says, "Hey, I'm actually leaving my team, and I'm going to another team, but I'll recommend you for my job if you want." And so that's kind of how I ended up out here. That was 2019. So that was kind of my first full-time gig. And then now it's 2022. So I've been doing it this is my third season. So.
Wow, that's actually really incredible, Alan. Like just to see the progression and the journey you've taken as well. Huge salute and respect to you, man. Because I guess with a lot of people when they're looking at, going into their dream profession and stuff like that, they're kind of, I guess, more, how do I put it, like naive kind of people just think, oh, well, it's easy. I'll just write the team like a letter and I'll be straight in and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
But what and that's the thing, like people don't realize that there's a lot of volunteering that you have to do, or lots of networking you have to do as well, or kind of
Oh,
things that you end
yeah,
up having to do for free.
that's massive for sure. I think, yeah, you have to be, I think the biggest thing is being able to be available and do it for free, maybe for a little bit. I know that's not ideal for a lot of people having to pay bills and stuff. I was just lucky that I happened to be in college and could go to those races on the weekends. It was just great timing. But yeah, and then just trying to meet people. I know I'm not exactly an outgoing person all the time. Um, so yeah, sometimes you just got to get out of your comfort zone and talk to people because you never know who that person you might talk to ends up being, even if they, you know, just seem like a random person at a racetrack. You never know.
Exactly. Like people fail to realize as well, Al, that like it's such a small world, and like there's somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody, and
Oh
within
yeah,
that kind of
yeah,
like chain,
absolutely.
there's always someone. Exactly, and like again, I commend you for getting your foot in the door, and just kind of sticking to your guns, and it shows that like your passion, as well as your skill and your kind of eye for photography as well, and just the way you've done it, it's put you in the position you are as well, which is great. It's such an amazing opportunity that you have, and not many people get that opportunity, but it's something that you've earned, which is so respectable and just commendable in that sense too. And also, one of the questions, kind of on the topic of like catching these photos and kind of building the portfolio of content as well, Al, is like, what are the major difficulties or like some of the challenges that you face? Because even when you're just talking about the Pikes Peak stuff, which is really intriguing too, like I imagine that there's probably certain spots that you have to experiment with, certain lighting as well, because unfortunately with motorsport, it's not blessed at most times by, Mother Nature and the sun and stuff like that too. And then when you have these
Yeah.
cars that are traveling at ridiculous like speeds as well, sometimes I imagine like this particular lenses or ways you have to capture them. How do you go about it? Like, do you have a methodology or a particular way in kind of setting up for these things?
Um, like for me, a lot of it is track dependent, and since I've
Mhm.
been to all the tracks multiple times now, but going into it, it's kind of nice to never have been to a lot of these spots before, just because it's new, it's different, and it's kind of your wonder and awe of it is that helps a lot because you're just really excited, and for me that kind of helps me get the creative juices flowing. But yeah, as far as some of the tracks, it really just depends. Like this last weekend, we were in Talladega, and most of the tracks that we go to, they let you go on the outside of the circuit um, and walk it. So I'll do like a whole lap around the track, sometimes two on the outside. But at Talladega, the super speedways, so Talladega and Daytona, they don't let you on the outside because the speeds are so high. you would get hit with just little rocks and pebbles. And even at a 1.5-mile track, that when you get hit by a little pebble that the cars kick up off the track, it'll hit you in the hand, and it hurts. So at a 2.5-mile track, it would be pretty dangerous, especially if they wrecked. Sometimes they get into the catch fence, and that's always a bad situation. So I'm limited to the inside of the track at those spots. So I know, okay, I have 2 or 3 spots I can go and spend a little bit of time in each one of those and just try a couple different things. So I'll just try still photos where basically the car's not moving within the frame, and then I'll try panning. So I'll do that for probably 15, 20 laps, and then I'll go to my next spot. And if I just happen to see something walking along, I'll stop and think, oh, that's like a nice angle or whatever. But now I know where all those spots are with all these tracks, because it is the same thing every week, or same thing every year, I should say. You kind of know where all the good spots are. But then also another thing that I do is just like working in the sport. You meet some other photographers and stuff that you become friends with, and they kind of know different spots too that they like to go to. So I always try and walk around with somebody, and they're always like, oh, the outside of turn 2 at this track is always really good. Let's go out there and do that stuff. So you kind of, when you work with other people, they can kind of point out some other things too that maybe you didn't notice, and that helps a lot.
I could imagine, and some great tips and insight there as well, Al, because, I guess a lot of it is kind of almost learning on the job and gaining the experience of what works and what maybe isn't so much to your taste or liking. But also as well, Al, whilst we're on the topic of it too, how important would you say is the quality of gear as well? Because another thing I guess that puts a lot of people off when it comes into creative kind of roles like this too is they'll say like I have a particular vision or there's a particular thing I want to shoot, but I don't have the equipment, for example, or the money to buy it as well. Like, what advice would you give to the young grasshoppers out there? I know you're probably still a young grasshopper
Yeah.
yourself, but to get somebody to take that first initial leap of faith, and to not base it so much on having the most expensive like camera or lens, or kind of being kind of put off by equipment.
Yeah, that's really tough. There definitely is. You will hit a point, kind of in your creative or photo or video career, when your gear will be a limitation, just based on what what the camera can do. I would say that's pretty far down your journey though. When you get to that point, uh, it might be a couple years before you realize, oh man, okay, I'm finally at the point where my gear is what. But I think even now, kind of your creative and what you're trying to come up with. Even now, I feel like I could take just a standard kit camera that you can get at, you know, a, a simple camera store that's maybe not super expensive. That might be, maybe it's only, which is, I know that's a lot, but for a base camera, that's pretty reasonable. I feel like I could still take one of those and use it and do well with it. It wouldn't be ideal, wouldn't be kind of I wouldn't be able to come up with kind of the style that I've created over the last 5, 6 years. But I could definitely do it. Wouldn't be ideal. Gear isn't always what holds you back. A lot of it's your kind of your creativity. But like if I wanted to shoot slow motion footage on one of those cameras, that camera just wouldn't allow me to do it. So I would have to, bump up to a bigger camera like the one that's sitting next to me. But I think you can go a really long ways with the gear that you initially get. And like I said, it'll be a while before you finally realize, oh man, okay, I need to upgrade. I think that point for me was probably 3 years into it before I was like, okay, I need a new camera. I had gotten some lenses. They weren't crazy expensive, maybe a couple $100s that I had saved for. But once I started getting some pretty serious equipment, that was a couple of years into the journey. So,
And I think that's really refreshing as well, Al, that you mentioned those things, because it's always just one of those things where I guess people have an idea or a vision, but then they limit themselves because they've seen like, somebody with like a camera that's worth X amount, or they don't believe that they'll be able to kind of like achieve the creative vision they've got in their head or mind, because of just the limited stuff they have. But like you mentioned, like there's so far you can go even with like the basic stuff. And I think like you
Hmm.
mentioned too, if you've got like an eye for detail or a particular idea, nowadays days you can be really creative in the way that you go about capturing it or the way you go editing it, like post capture as well, to kind of create the effect that you're
Yeah,
after as well. So it's really
yeah,
like
for sure.
reassuring that you mentioned that, and I think a lot of our younger kind of audience will take comfort in that too. But to change it up as
Yeah,
well, Al, you're talking about the legendary Joe Gibbs Racing team before, and we just wanted to get insight into, like what is it like, being on the road with them, being at the track with them too. Have you got any funny stories with like the drivers or even the members of the pit crew too behind the scenes?
yeah. I mean, I this is this is my first year at this team, but it's been. I mean, I'm on the road a lot with them. I think this last weekend was my 20 man. It was my 27th weekend on the road this season. Um, and we also have, so for those that aren't super familiar with NASCAR, there's actually three levels of the NASCAR series. So you have the NASCAR Cup Series, the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and the NASCAR Truck Series. And we have the Cup Series and Xfinity Series teams. So basically, Xfinity and Trucks are kind of the minor leagues, or to put it like Xfinity is Formula Two, and Trucks is like Formula Three. So we have like a Formula Two team essentially. And so I cover all their races when they're at the track with us, and they have a 33 weekend series. So we have, um, so we have a lot of fun with all the guys on the road because there's 5 mechanics per team. We have 7 teams if you include the Xfinity series and the Cup series, and so you get to know these guys pretty well, going to dinner with them and stuff. And so it definitely is kind of a family atmosphere, which I really enjoy. And I think that's one of the things that Joe Gibbs Racing really prides themselves on is the family atmosphere. Our team owner Joe Gibbs, everyone calls him Coach because he used to be a coach in the National Football League here in the States. But then his son Coy is also involved in the team, and one of their family friends, Dave Alpern, he's the team president. So, and there's a lot of people that have been here for the 31 years the team has been around, which is really impressive. I don't think you can say that about many other teams. So even in the office, I go to the office 3 days a week, and it's always a good time. Go to lunch with everybody, and then we travel on the road. So you kind of have to be friends with these people because you're around them a lot. And I'm really
Sure.
lucky that I enjoy being with these people all the time. Um, as far as funny stories go, man, there's a lot from this year. Uh, I'm trying to think of one that's probably appropriate to share. Um, yeah, there's that happens in the haulers when we hang out. That's maybe not PG. Um, man, yeah, I can't think of any off the top of my head. But if I do, I'll stop you and let you know.
Yeah, please do, Al, because I mean, it's just interesting, and I think it's refreshing for a lot of our listeners too. Because in the world of F1, I hate to kind of bring it there, like it at times it just feels like a toxic cesspool pool, and it's just
Mm,
people
yeah,
throwing and slinging mud at each other from either side. But to kind of see a different atmosphere in NASCAR, and to kind of see like how a team can be like so family orientated, and yeah, the rivalries, the moments in time, like in the sport where things get a bit heated behind the wheel, but at the end of the day, everybody just goes about their business, and it's just like a fun, thing. And people, I guess, like you mentioned as well, because it's such a long season, you really have to be kind of a next level of jerk to like hold like a grudge or to just be difficult for such a long period of time as well. I don't
yeah,
imagine
yeah,
it's necessarily healthy to kind of just be kind of angry all the time or to just kind of move a certain way. So it's really refreshing actually to hear that, and I think it's going to encourage and entice a lot of our listeners, to to go and check out NASCAR if they haven't before, and actually, hopefully, go and support Joe Gibbs Racing too, because that's one of our favorite teams here on the pod as well. But it's interesting, and actually, on the topic of Joe Gibbs Racing, like you guys have such an interesting franchise of like drivers too, because you got Denny Hamlin, which drives the 11 FedEx car, really cool livery as well. You got the infamous Kyle Busch with the M&M car as well. I know Kyle has a lot of interesting kind of moments which we can get into at some point as well. You've got Christopher Bell, you've got Martin as well. There's so many cool drivers. And what we wanted to do as well, Alice, we kind of have this segment of the show for like our F1 related guests, but this time we're going to do a bit of a remix. We're going to do a DJ Khaled remix on this one. We have like a segment called Taxi, Dinner, and Avoid. And essentially how it will work is, imagine, you're going to go for just like a nice little hometown meal in Colorado. And you have to pick one of the NASCAR drivers on the current grid to give you a taxi ride into town. And then you're going to pick another driver to have dinner with. And then finally, like, we don't have to give them too much shade, but this one particular NASCAR driver, you wouldn't be too fond of seeing and you try to avoid. And bear in mind, whoever you pick for this like trio of I guess responses, you can't reuse them again for any of the other questions that may or may not pop up for the rest of the interview.
Okay, so am I allowed to pick any driver in the NASCAR Cup Series or just our drivers that we have?
Because I don't want to land you in trouble with Joey, I'd say it's anybody on the grid.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Taxi. Ooh, that's a good question. Let me pull up. There's so many drivers. There's 39 drivers, so I need to pull up all the drivers, because I feel like I'm not going to be able to remember all of it. I've got the NASCAR website pulled up right here. All right. Taxi with Kyle Larson, just because he's probably he's one of the best drivers right now. I'd feel pretty safe in his hands, and he's a pretty cool guy. Dinner. Oof, dinner. Dinner, I'd say Bubba Wallace. I know him a little bit because he's into photography as well, so we talk about that occasionally. So I think we could have a good time at dinner. Avoid. Avoid. That's a good one. Avoid. I'm gonna say Ross Chastain. Just because our drivers have had beef with him all year, so.
I think, that's a fair point as well. It's not us, giving them too much heat, but these things happen in the sport too. And in a way, I guess it's what keeps it interesting and everyone on their toes too, because there'll be 1 week, I imagine, where you guys have the upper edge with the car and this the kind of sub that you guys have for it too. And the other weeks as well, the opposition have that same advantage, and it kind of can come to a head or come to blows on circuit too. So interesting. And actually, whilst we're speaking as well about fast drivers too, there are Kyle Larson, he's done really amazing this season too, and in a couple of the races, I think I was watching the Watkins Glen one where I think him and who was the guy that was like side by side with him on one of the safety car restarts or caution restarts?
That would have been actually the Xfinity, and that was our one of our drivers, actually, Ty Gibbs, who is Joe Gibbs' grandson. He drives for us in the Xfinity series. And Ty actually ended up winning that race. But yeah, that would have been, because sometimes the Cup drivers would drop down to kind of get some just lap times and track time in the lower series when they're with us. And so Kyle just happened to be running in the Xfinity series race at was it Watkins Glen? No, that was Road America. Sorry, Watkins Glen.
Because I think Watkins Glen was the one where Kimi Räikkönen made that kind of like one-off appearance.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. That was with. Yep. Yes. Who was it? Was it? I don't think it was Denny. It might have been Christopher Bell. He was one. Our other driver who drives the 20 car. I think that's what it was. No, wait, was it? There's so many races; it's so hard to keep track of.
I'm trying to think as well.
So there's okay. it was Ty. It was Ty Gibbs in the 54 car. They also raced each other pretty hard at Road America as well. Yes, it was Watkins Glen. It was Kyle and Ty. It was the same thing. Kyle was running the Xfinity Series race. Ty was up there as well. Yep, that's what it was. Yeah, and they went through the bus stop, 2 wide, and at Watkins Glen in a NASCAR, that's basically impossible, and they ended up wrecking.
Yeah, I think I remember that happening too, and I was like, wow, this is like very feisty. I couldn't believe it as well. And just and then
Yeah.
even I think Chase Elliott as well in the I think it was the Cup Series race that weekend too had like a moment with Carl Larson there too. Like this kind of things that happen normally in the kind of like track races too.
Oh yeah. I would say the road course races that we do, it's very prevalent. Just kind of how it ends up working out. And even with Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott, our teammates, and that's teammates. How much of teammates are they on track once the green flag drops is different track to track, I would say, because they're trying to win. They're trying to race for the championship. I would say F1 it's a lot more controlled amongst the teams because the teams work out of the same pit stalls and garage area, whereas on pit road with our pit boxes, they could be on complete different ends, and the crew chiefs don't really talk to each other, and so you kind of just end up with that dynamic that happens. It even happens at circle tracks too, but road courses. I mean, the cool thing about NASCAR is since it's not open wheel racing, you can touch and you can kind of beat and bang and move people out of the way and be more aggressive than you would in an open wheel car. And so sometimes those things just happen.
Of course. And I guess as well, like as long as the drivers walk away from, the incidents and stuff like that unscathed, it kind of adds to the storyline and I guess the drama in a positive way and kind of keeps everybody on their toes too. And actually is a good segue to the following question now. Like the next one we're going to put forward to you is if Netflix come to you tomorrow and bear in mind you actually are a very creative genius too, so you would be the ideal person for this actually, to commission a documentary about a rivalry in NASCAR history. Which 2 drivers would you pick? And for this one, you're allowed to pick just well, 2 NASCAR drivers of any generation or era. And also, as an alternative answer, you can pick 2 drivers on the current grid, 2 for this one.
Okay. Man, I mean, I think the classic rivalry that everyone kind of knows about from the late 80s, early 90s was Dale Earnhardt Sr. and Jeff Gordon, and that's been talked about a lot. So I guess I'll save you that answer because I think there's an ESPN 30. If not, it's on Fox Sports or something. If your viewers are interested in finding it, I can't remember what it's called, but it goes into really good detail, kind of talking about how kind of Jeff Gordon was super young when he came into NASCAR, but he was super talented in sprint car racing. Comes into NASCAR, kind of takes NASCAR by storm, and Dale Earnhardt Sr., legendary driver, one of the best of all time, kind of guy. Jeff Gordon from California, very refined kid, in kind of their rivalry. But I guess I'll go with current kind of rivalries. I would say, man, that's a good one. I would say just based on this year, you could probably say Ross Chastain and Denny Hamlin. They've had kind of incidents at a couple races, and Ross is really he's rubbed quite a few people the wrong way. He's raced Martin really hard this year, spun him out, I think under yellow maybe, or one of them was going a lap down and Ross spun him out. And so you've had a couple people that have been pretty unhappy with him, kind of the way he drives. So yeah, I would say Denny Hamlin and Ross Chastain.
It's an interesting one, and actually, we'll circle back to the kind of Ross Chastain and Denny Hamlin like rivalry at the moment too. But also, like we don't actually get to talk about him enough, so I'd love to do it also on this episode too. Al, like Dale Earnhardt Sr. was one of the great NASCAR drivers, and it's sad as well that he was taken away from us. If people
Mhm.
don't know, like there was like a very kind of bad crash he had on a speedway. This was before as well. They brought in like the hands device, which maybe,
Yeah.
had it been today, it might have saved his life. But, he has obviously a son, Dale Earnhardt Jr., which also had a lot of success. But yeah, just as like an icon of the sport, like how highly do people speak of him, Al, and just to give like probably people that don't know about NASCAR insight into how legendary Dale was. Like, who would you liken him to in terms of like Formula One or maybe other motorsport series people watch?
Mm. And yeah, that's a good question. Who would I liken him to? He was just a very rough and tough, kind of didn't care. If he respected you, he would run you well, but if he didn't have respect for you, he wasn't going to give you, any room out on the racetrack. Um, yeah, I mean to give an example, I mean, even when you go to the track, uh, every week there's always campers, people camping out in the infield, and
Mhm.
there are hundreds of flags with the number 3 on them. Dale Earnhardt, for those who don't know, Dale Earnhardt Sr. drove for Richard Childress Racing in the number 3 car, and there are still flags that people run on their motorhomes that are Dale Earnhardt Sr. flags. People still wear old vintage BF Goodrich was the sponsor. They wear those T-shirts. I mean, he was just an icon of the sport. He was kind of the guy that everybody loved. I mean, to show you kind of how much people loved him, Dale Earnhardt Jr. Won most popular driver every year for 16 years when he was in the sport. That was how much people
Wow.
loved him. So his legacy kind of was taken over by his son. And so anyone that was a Dale Earnhardt Sr. fan, which is there are a lot of, they just like naturally gravitated towards his son. And so that's how Dale won uh, most popular driver 16 times. And Dale's an incredibly nice person, has done a lot for the sport, and does a lot of really cool stuff. He has a really good podcast too. If For those of you that really enjoy listening to podcasts, they're pretty long, but they're always really good. He has some pretty interesting guests on.
That's awesome. At some point as well, we'll have to plug that, and maybe hopefully it will one day be a dream. Maybe get him on the podcast at some stage too, because
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Dale's it really would, wouldn't it? And yeah, he's just an awesome guy. And even for me, just kind of following him loosely as well, even just when he's doing the NBC coverage and stuff like that, he's always got
Yeah.
great insight and stuff like that too. Which leads us back into kind of, I guess, the modern day too. Al, we're speaking about rivalries and how Ross has kind of rubbed Denny Hamlin and some other kind of guys on the grid not necessarily the right way. How important is kind of like having your allegiances in NASCAR? Because I'll give you a funny analogy actually. Like I follow this guy on YouTube called David Shieldhouse, which makes like also NASCAR content, and he plays a lot of NASCAR Thunder 2004, which I'm sure you played a lot of as a kid too. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah, I played a
But
little bit of that.
yeah, and one thing I picked up from even just the video game, it was 2004, so for 2004, it's quite remarkable that if you hit another AI driver in the video game, there's like a rivalry system. So if you hit the
Hmm.
driver, like the computer or the AI that's, like I forgot his name now. Like Jeff Gordon, for example, or
Yeah.
Jimmy Johnson, or any of these
Hmm.
guys. If you hit them, then you get like a negative mark, and then anytime you try to overtake them, they try and take you out of the race and sideswipe
Oh
you.
my gosh.
But like adversely, like like in an alternative way, if you shared your slipstream with another driver, then they'd be more likely to like be an ally to you and let you pass without like crashing into you deliberately.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
is that a similar thing with real life NASCAR too? And just like some drivers maybe showing more respect to others because they know that there's a lot on the line, and if they upset one of the guys in the midfield or kind of at the back of the pack, when they go to lap them, there's always the possibility that they could get taken out, or their life could be made harder than it would normally be.
Oh, absolutely. So in NASCAR, unlike Formula One, you have two wide restarts when they regroup the field after a yellow, and if you want the top line or you want the bottom line, and there's this little triangle, they call it the choose cone, and if you go to the top of the choose cone on the one lap before the restart, you get the top line. If you go to the bottom, you get the bottom, and will specifically pick certain people to restart in front of or restart behind based on if they like them or not, if they're friends off the track, stuff like that. Knowing, hey, they'll help me a little bit on this restart. They'll put their front bumper to my rear bumper and push me to the front. Where sometimes you'll see it too on the track when you're watching a restart. Say if you had Ross behind Denny, Ross is probably not going to put his front bumper to Denny's rear bumper and push him. He's going to let Denny do a majority of the work. And if he spins his tires, well, that sucks for Denny. But as soon as Ross gets to that start-finish line, when you can move to the bottom line, if he has room to do it, he'll do it. And so you kind of see that play out on the track in that way. When we were in Pocono, Denny and Ross were racing for the lead, and going out of turn 2, they were side by side. And Denny and I forgot who said it on the broadcast. It was Kyle Petty. He said, because they were racing side by side, Ross ended up in the wall because Denny left him basically enough room to either get out of the gas or hit the wall. And Ross chose to hit the wall, stay in the gas, try to keep the line off of 2. And Kyle Petty said in the broadcast, he left him just enough room to wreck himself. See that play out on the track all the time.
Wow, that's such a unique and kind of different approach to it, man. Like it's a completely different philosophy in that sense to a sport like Formula One, and even there's other things I've heard and kind of seen in the sport too, like drivers particularly pulling away from the other to break the toe, to not allow them to kind of like, get like a slipstream, or, maybe on the more dirty, Max Verstappen-esque type, maybe driving into the side of someone's fender to cut their tire and stuff like that. It's really a different art. For like a viewer like me, for example, it just makes it interesting because again, there's so many different things, and it's not just the formula of the cars, the science of the cars, but it's also the nature of the drivers. And if one's more aggressive, if one likes high risk maneuvers, if one's more experienced and takes a kind of like more kind of slow and steady approach, there's so many different dynamics in it as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you look at our individual drivers, they all have different styles, kind of how they race people back. I would say like Denny and Kyle they're more aggressive. They will race people harder if they've done something to them previously in the season. Whereas Martin and Christopher, they're very clean. They don't do a lot to people. They're just nice guys in general when you talk to them. And that's how they are on the track. They're not looking really for payback ever. They won't give you a ton of leeway, but they're not going to try and wreck you. And so you kind of see the different personalities play out, which is pretty interesting.
Oh, absolutely. And even in like a championship context too, it makes you double think it, because if you know that there's a guy which could potentially take you out, you're not going to do as much to kind of piss them off in that sense, because you know that there's a
Yeah.
risk they can like, deliberately try and take you out of the race, or kind of like deal with you in a way that's unfavorable. So that's really interesting. And just to move the conversation along, Al, like the next kind of question in the series of kind of interactive ones we've got for you is one of our viewers wanted to ask you, if you had to pick a driver and a track, particularly like a NASCAR track, to have a hot lap in, who are you picking for your hot lap ride, and what track would you pick?
Ooh. Man, that's a good question. I would say I'd pick Kyle Busch, and I would pick Bristol. For those of you listeners that don't know, Bristol is a half-mile, really, really high bank track, and I think Kyle has more wins than anybody there. I know he has like 10 wins there. He's had a few times where he's won the truck race, Xfinity race, and Cup race. So like going to that track with Kyle, you're pretty much like, oh, we've got a shot to win, when you show up. So I would say Kyle Busch and Bristol.
I think that's a good choice, and like we mentioned earlier too, Kyle comes across as quite a character too, and I can't tell our listeners enough how many like fight compilations I've seen on
Oh my
YouTube of him
gosh, it's
like
incredible.
fighting the drivers. Exactly, and also, well, actually, I'm not gonna spoil it. I'm gonna leave that for the preceding question, but yeah, like he's got an affinity with a really cool sponsor, but I want to save that for one of the livery questions I've got coming up soon. So
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
I'm sure our listeners are going to be excited for that as well. But kind of also to go back to the photography side of it as well. I know that we're kind of like going over and exploring so many different themes, and in some cases, doing an oval, no pun intended, of some of the themes here. But how
uh-huh.
do you go about like catching the right mood for a picture, and like how do you go about like picking the right moment as well? Because going through some of your work as well, which is phenomenal. I really implore people to go and check out your Instagram as well and see some of the amazing work that you do. There's like a picture of Bubba Wallace and his win at Kansas Speedway, which is a really
Yep.
emotional kind of moment for him. You also had Christopher Bell and his partner, like at the during the national anthem. And again,
Hmm.
a thing that's interesting, I think refreshing about like, American motorsport racing is that there's a lot of pride, in that national anthem, and also taking that
Yeah.
moment
Yep.
out to realize how dangerous, that these sports are with how high like speed they are. And even just other
Hmm.
moments as well, like candidly, like Denny Hamlin jumping into his 11 FedEx machine as well. Like, how do you go about picking these moments, and also just like, is there a science? Is there kind of just like a vibe that inspires you when you're coming up with these shots?
Um, I wouldn't say there's a science to it. So
Mm,
because we have so many drivers, since we have four drivers, um, it's kind of a lot to capture. Knowing, okay, sponsors might use these photos for their social media, because we give them everything that I capture, or they have the ability to use it. I guess it's kind of just like if I if I see like, okay, I haven't shot this, like Denny's car. I think I know the photo you're talking about of him getting in the car at Sonoma. Like I hadn't ever shot it that way before from straight on. Um,
mm,
and one of our other cars was right behind him. So I had just shot. I think it was getting in the car. I turned around and I thought, oh, okay, if I get low for the shot, I can get Denny getting in the car. Um, but there's so much that happens, and it's so fast. Uh, it's kind of just like wherever I'm at, wherever I'm standing, maybe I can only afford to take two steps before they get into the car, say they're putting their helmet on or whatever. You know, there's not a lot of time because I'm trying to get Denny getting his helmet on, I'm trying to get Christopher, I'm trying to get Kyle, and I'm trying to get Martin. And so it's kind of just some of it's luck, um, some of it is kind of skill, I guess, in a way. But I would say it's 75% just right place, right time for a lot of these moments. Um,
mm.
and especially too, like the photo of Christopher with his wife on the grid during the national anthem. You know, Christopher maybe he qualified towards the front of the pack, so they line the cars up how they qualified, kind of like how they do in F1. And so Christopher was maybe at the front, but I think Kyle was at the back. So I have to pick kind of, okay, I have these moments that I can capture of, say, Christopher, if he's close to another one of our drivers. So, say, Christopher's first, Denny's fifth, Martin's 17th, Kyle's 23rd. I have to run the whole grid.
Oh, it is.
And so sometimes I just have to pick and choose what I can get. And so sometimes stuff like that just kind of presents itself. And certain tracks too, they line up the cars differently and all that. So a lot of it's just kind of, okay, this moment's right in front of me. Maybe I'm not in the best spot, but it's happening right now. I have to capture it. I can't try and make it perfect. Um, and so I think a lot of that is what ends up making these moments cool is they're just kind of, they're as they are. They're not staged. Like I don't think I've asked a driver this year, hey, stop what you're doing real quick. Let me get a shot of this. That's not really my style. So that's kind of how a lot of those end up. It's just kind of random.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know what I really appreciate about it all is like it just comes across so authentic and so raw. And it's almost like the thing I appreciate about your style is it makes me feel like I'm at the circuit right there. Like and almost I think it's one thing kind of getting a picture of somebody like you mentioned, like if it's like a photo shoot or it's like a deliberate kind of like attempt to, make to stage something, but to capture something in its element, in its raw kind of nature, like a car speeding at 200 miles an hour, or to catch a driver in those last few moments with their engineer, with their fitness trainer as well as they're about to jump into the car, and drive at speeds of excess of 200 miles an hour. I think there's a real art, and I can't rate you highly enough for that as well, in terms of like
No, thank you, man.
portraying that and recreating it as well, man. Honestly, it's a huge skill and talent, and I wish people would give like yourself and also the other kind of photographers more credit for it too, because like not all of us can be at the track. I'm actually, funnily enough, haven't been to a real kind of race in reality before, so just to kind of see the work you do, I think it brings a lot of the fans like myself close to the sport, which is so unique, and in a way I feel they should definitely pay you more for. All for a pay rise. Let's make that a trend as well. But
Yeah,
yeah, man, it's
that'd be great.
of course, man, of course. But yeah, it's so intriguing, and I think a lot goes into it. And actually, another thing I was gonna just ask you as well, even though I think you've kind of answered it anyways, it's like how much of a kind of input does like the team have in the creative direction you take with some of the pictures? Because you mentioned earlier as well, like Bubba Wallace having like a passion and a kind of interest in photography too, and he's probably
Hmm.
one of the most free spirited drivers on the grid. So
Oh yeah,
like,
absolutely.
is it one of those ones where like they just say, hey, you do what you want, you're the expert, just kind of do your thing, or is it a thing where sometimes they give you a bit of input, or there's like a particular event or marketing kind of exercise they want to do, and they'll tell you, oh, we want you to shoot it this particular way. How does that kind of like balance work?
Um, say for the most part, they just kind of let me do my thing, which I really really appreciate. We
Mm,
have a guy that sits across from me. He's sick right now, but he's our videographer, and he's really really talented as well. And so it's kind of just, hey, come up with what you can come up with, which I love. Um, but then at the same time, like today, we were working on just like talk video, and I was working with my boss on it at the same time. And so it was kind of just oh hey, here's this clip. I want you to how you feel, and kind of working it together. So I would say a majority of the time, like at the track, it's totally up to us, which I love. But and then occasionally, like sponsors will have requests, like Interstate whenever they're or they're on Martin's car earlier this year at New Hampshire. They have a list of shots that they want, but they're generally
mm.
pretty generic, uh, and so those are kind of easy to capture. Um, so yeah, for the most part, they generally just let me do my thing, which I love. Um, they trust us, which is awesome because they are kind of they're big moments. A lot of the things that happen at the track, and if you miss them, it's not always the best thing. But the fact there's two of us, that kind of helps. Uh, so yeah, I really do appreciate that they let us kind of do our thing creatively. So yeah.
Absolutely. And on that kind of point as well, like to you, how important is it for, like a photographer or just a creative person in general to have that freedom, to have that input and to have like that creative control from your perspective with the freedom?
I mean, I think it's really big because it's kind of how you're going to grow, but at the same time, I think you'll grow um, to take creative direction from somebody, kind of what someone wants. Uh, you to kind of working within a set of parameters. Um, if a client has a very very specific shot, you're going to have to figure out how to get that. And I think this is really big. I mean, especially, you know, I work with people from FedEx, Bass Pro Shops. Like we have all those sponsors, and most of them are just happy to get what they can, um, which is super cool. That, um, but yeah, I think it's definitely a huge part of your learning experience is just figuring out what works for you, what your style is on your own. Because I mean, I love Vladimir Reese's work. I don't know if you know him. He's the photographer for Red Bull, one of the photographers for Red Bull F1. His work is incredible. And I feel like I have a very similar style to him, just kind of for the last, as long as I've been doing this, I've been following him. So probably the last 6-7 years I've been following his work. And so it was a huge influence on my work. And I think finding people that their work really stands out to you and kind of connects with you. I think finding people like that is big because they will influence a lot of what you like. But I think it's also important too to find people that have different styles than you and follow them, kind of see what they're doing, try and figure out, okay, how are they editing these photos? How are they taking these photos? Because the more versatile you are at doing stuff, the more projects you'll be able to take on and things like that.
Absolutely, and I think it's key, like you mentioned too, to have that range of skills and dynamic kind of like skill sets as well to apply in different circumstances. Like you said, to go for the more artsy and more kind of free, kind of like spirited kind of styles of shots and kind of directions. But like you also said, like from the commercial aspect too, when you get partners or kind of like business kind of associates as well that want a particular style or fashion done, it's nice to kind of be able to be all encompassing and have kind of like the jack of all trades to kind of deal with all of those situations. So again, it speaks to how much of a skill it really is, and on top of that, how I guess you're always learning. It's not a thing where you're ever going to stop at one level, and you're always elevating yourself too to capture all the moments, whether it's high, low, or like a really serious formal event, or kind of like a more candid laid back sort of scenario.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we have different events that happen at the shop all the time here. Like whenever we win a race, coach Joe Gibbs, he will call everybody to shop floor and they'll hang a banner. Those photos I take differently than the stuff I do at the track because it's more like documenting what's happening. And I do that at the track too as well, but it's a little different because we're using those for kind of our own internal use for stuff like that. So yeah, being able to be versatile is huge.
Absolutely. And kind of another kind of interesting question here. This is going to be your trickiest question of the day. So, I hope you give the right answer. Setting the scene. Oh man, that's what we like to hear. Right. So, well, actually, to kind of give you a bit more information about myself as well, like, I do a bit of content creation. Obviously, I'm a host here on Stripping the Dipping. I'm a sim racer as well, a really keen one that does a lot of kind of esports events and stuff like that too. So, just kind of give you a bit of a kind of like, kind of idea of what's going on. But essentially, there's a bet you have to make, and it is that I'm gonna go up against somebody else, but I'll mention them shortly. But me as AMG Dens, I'm gonna be racing in a NASCAR next gen Toyota, like series car, and I'm gonna go up against Bubba Wallace, and he's gonna be in a standard Toyota Camry, and we're gonna have to race each other around the Daytona Oval. Now, me in a Toyota Cup car versus Bubba Wallace in a standard Toyota Camry. Who's your bets on to win that race?
Man, because it's not going to be pack racing with other cars around you, it'd just be you and him. I'm going to go with you because Daytona is probably the simplest of all the tracks. It's generally just flat out, keep the wheel straight. The bank turns your car for the most part. When you're going down the backstretch, you have to put a little bit of right turn into it because the cars naturally want to turn left when they're flat. So I think I'm going to give it to you just because it's the simplest track.
Hey, well, you guys heard that first. Georgina can just edit this and just make it out as if I said Dens would whoop Bubba Wallace in a I'm joking. I'm joking. But Man, that's thank you for that, man. I'll definitely take that. And Bubba Wallace, if you listen to this podcast any stage as well, man, just know if you ever want that smoke, if you ever want to go against big dents, around a NASCAR track, just fly me out. I'll be ready. I'll be there, and like we could have a good time as well. So yeah, if you're listening, Bubba Wallace, and just all the guys as well at the 45 team, just give me a shout. You know where to find me. But thank you for that, Al, man. I'll definitely take that. It's a
Yeah,
great
you're welcome.
compliment too. That's made my day. Now, on a more serious question, actually, because that was quite funny. Another kind of sticky one before we conclude it out is in your humble view, what's the best NASCAR livery of all time? And to
Ooh.
kind of give you a bit more subjectivity, what's your favorite NASCAR livery of all time? And I'm just gonna go for the really obvious one. It has to be, and I referenced it earlier too, obviously, Kyle Busch with the M&M kind of like livery. It's so cool seeing like little M&M men like on the side of the car. And one thing I didn't realize is that it seems like he's always been sponsored by the Mars group that produced those
Hmm.
chocolates from like most of his career. So to see him going away to a different team next season, and the fact that those poor M&M guys might not be on his car next season, it kind of does make me quite sad. I can't lie. But handing it back to you, man. Like, yeah, like what would you say is the best NASCAR livery of all time, and which one would you say is your favorite?
The best NASCAR livery of all time. So I want to say it might have been 2019. Um, Bush Beer, who sponsors Kevin Harvick, did a really cool it was a season long campaign, generations of people. So, you had Gen X, Gen Z, millennials, baby boomers, stuff like that. And they did a car. I think they did 4 or 5 of them of each different generation. And the car that they did for Gen X was super cool. It was like lasers and retro and kind of like a gridscape. It was black with neon, like almost like Miami Vice kind of look. It was super cool. I think that's probably my favorite of all time.
Ah,
Yeah,
that's interesting, man. And like from a marketing perspective too, like the thing I kind of like again with American motorsports is that we see that for some of the oval races, they'll have like a particular livery if they're in a particular state as well, and the sponsors are from that home state. You know, you might see more of their kind of advertising and marketing on the car too. But yeah, like to have that concept in a car as well is really interesting because there'd be just so many different like I guess iterations of the generations and Bush Bear as well, and that kind of like I guess link between him and Kevin Harvick as well.
yeah. I think probably if you want to do like a case study in the last couple of years of who's done a really good job with different uh, in live like that, I think beat Bush Beer. I think they've done an incredible job.
Awesome. And what would you say is like your favorite livery? So, I'm sure the NASCAR guys are not going to kill you for this because this is more like subjective. Which one, or which two? In fact, go for free because, like I'll probably look at them or try and find them like after the recording as well as to have a look because I'm a huge like livery guy and I always like the one-off
Yeah.
ones or the special ones or just ones that are iconic for their own reasons.
Um, I mean, I really like what the people at FedEx did for the car this year.
Mhm.
It was kind of a departure from what they've done previous years with the gradients on the top half of the car and then on the bottom half. I think they did a really good job with it. It feels like FedEx. It's very clean, and it's their colors. I think they did an awesome job with that. Um, and I think Ally Racing with the 48 car, they do a really good job of liveries and stuff as well. Alex Bowman's car, and then another one. I'm trying to think. Oh, this year on Ty Gibbs's car, the 54 car, Cub Cadet. They make lawnmowers and stuff. They did they did the race at Watkins Glen, and they had a really really cool design on their car. It was very simple, but it looked awesome.
That's really cool, and sometimes as well, it's the simple ones that are more eye-catching or just memorable in that sense too, because there's like not so much going on, but it's the simplicity which you can appreciate, or like the nice tie of colors that works quite well as well.
Yeah. Another really good looking one, if you just want to look it up. And it's actually, I don't know if you follow Sean Bull Designs on Instagram. He does a lot of like concept for F1 cars. If you don't follow
Okay.
him, he's a great follow. But he did a car for Team Penske for Snap-on, the tool, like they make wrenches and stuff. They for both their NHRA drag car and the two Cup car that Austin Cindric drives. And that's a really cool car as well.
Man, you're giving me a nice collection, which I'll probably put onto my iRacing account later today,
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
So, hey, this is a really good kind of like list here, and thank you for that as well. Because again, that's another thing which I think makes NASCAR even just aesthetically nice to look at is that even if like let's say the Toyotas have the same chassis or I guess body kit on the exterior, deliveries are really what differentiate the cars from each other. And straight away even like Bubba Wallace with like the McDonald's stuff, or when he was running in
yeah,
23 and he had the Jordan kind of stuff too. I was like, this is so damn cool, and
yeah,
it's
yeah,
nice that the teams and the drivers have that kind of creative input as well with the sponsors to kind of have that too. Like it's so unique, and I guess as well it makes the sport like so enticing and fun, and probably kind of bad for me because I've got this whole thing of collecting like scale model cars in 143,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I oh man, I dare to think this whole little space I have if I have to start collecting all the NASCARs in like small
Oh
143
my
scales as
gosh.
well.
That's such a big part of NASCAR kind of fandom
Mhm.
is the we call them die casts. Um, Man, yeah, that is bring their die cast to the track all the time to have drivers to sign. Um, yeah, and they are really cool. Uh, and like when we win, our team will order you. You can order like the car as it was ran and won. So they take pictures of it in victory lane. So it'll
Mhm.
have all the confetti on the scale model and stuff. It's really cool.
Ah, that's really interesting, and actually, Al, you've given me some inspiration to ask our good old boss here, Georgina, to line me up with some nice mini champ diecasts as well of Lewis crossing the line whenever he does get his next win, hopefully. But nah, that's super cool, and again, like the attention to detail is probably really interesting as well, because I imagine there's like a normal race spec one where the car's clean, and then
Yep.
maybe like
Hmm.
you mentioned, like a race finish one where it's got like the marbles and all the kind of like maybe
Yeah.
wall impacts and impressions, stuff like that. That's such a
Yeah.
cool feature, and again, nice that the team offer that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. They have um, the diecast company employs one of the photo agencies, photos in victory lane, and yeah, they have. So say if Denny's hard and he gets a tire mark on the side of his car from another car's wheel, that'll be on the diecast. So it's pretty cool.
Man, that's super. I'm gonna have to start looking. I will message you probably afterwards as well and just ask for a
Yeah,
link to
yeah,
some of
go
these.
ahead.
'Cause, man, that'd be cool. Like, unfortunately, my collection's gonna probably get too out of hand, but we'll deal with that afterwards, man. We'll deal with that after.
Yeah,
Well, you've been an amazing guest, and we definitely would love to have you back on the show as well because there's so much insight, and I feel as well so many things that we could go on to explore and to look at too. But as a final note, Al, and to kind of hand the floor to you as well, the track to you, to say, like where can our listeners find you, firstly of all, and are there any exciting projects or adventures you're looking forward to for the rest of the season? And also just like like I kind of always try and do for the guys out there which are looking to get into it, or really kind of like wanting to find inspiration, what kind of tips would you give to somebody either starting or somebody kind of in that place, but they haven't landed a role yet at a team, but they really want to do so in the years coming forward?
all right. Yeah, so my Instagram is at Al Wheeler. Pretty simple. Um, yeah, if anyone has any questions, I always tell people when they message me any like young and upcoming photographers, or even people that don't want to be a photographer but want to be a mechanic or whatever. Totally willing to answer any questions that they have about kind of getting their foot in the door or anything like that. As far as projects go that I'm excited about this year, man, since there's not a lot of races left, I mean, there's 6 races left, which probably sounds like a lot, but it really is coming down to kind of the end of the season. We don't really have a ton of projects. It's kind of just daily stuff. I think next season will be pretty fun. Like the beginning of the season, we always do some kind of build up projects, and those were always fun because it's kind of just, okay, what crazy ideas can we come up with to kind of make it look cool. Probably the beginning of next season's stuff is going to be our next big project.
Oh, that's going to be really exciting. I guess as well for our listeners and fans, if they're feeling like maybe it's too late for them now to get kind of like, thrown into the deep end of the sport. Obviously next season's going to be even bigger, even better, even more kind of like one-off races and things that are going to be really intriguing, and to kind of follow that from the start of the season to end as well. I imagine it's going to be so interesting for a lot of us, and you guys have gained a fan in me. I will definitely be rooting for you guys, and adding to my like nice little diecast collection of cars, hopefully with all the guys in the team. So it's really awesome. We thank you immensely for your time too, because it's so cool to hear these stories, to get these perspectives, to be in touch, with like great kind of professional guys like yourself too. And we wish you all the best of success too with the stuff coming out in the future and just your journey as well. It's been an honor.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I had really. It's fun kind of introducing people to the world of NASCAR because I was not a fan really, I would say, when I started, and I've definitely grown to enjoy it. So it's always fun introducing kind of new people to it and telling them all about it, because it is a lot more than just driving around in circles. That's for sure. There's a lot of stuff that goes on. I wish I could talk about some of the stuff that happens here at the shop that we do to make the cars faster. It's not really my spot to talk about it. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, we'll save the trade secrets for another day. But no, it's been incredible. And also, man, you need to get into podcasting too, man. Like the way you break stuff down, and like you mentioned as well, giving people insight into it, it's great, because there's a lot of people that find it daunting or maybe a bit narrow-minded. But the way you've put it across, I could genuinely, including myself, see people get more invested and actually giving it the time of day too, man. So, you're an amazing person, and just keep up the great work you're doing as well, bro.
Oh, thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
No worries at all. Well, we need to get you back on the show at some point. Hopefully, maybe towards the end of the season, we'll do like a light touch up and see what's going on. But in the meantime, guys,
awesome.
Exactly, and we're always happy to have you here as well, man. So, thank you so much for your time. Guys, make sure you go and obviously check out Al Wheeler. Jorgy's gonna put the links in the description, and she always does because she's amazing, but still owes me a couple of die costs. Wink, wink. But make sure you follow Al Wheeler. Make sure as well you follow the Joe Gibbs guys as well, because they're an amazing team. They put out some really great content as well that you can get invested into. So again, it's an awesome time, and there's never been a better time than right now. So absolutely go for it. And then, it's been your boy AMG Dens, aka the MDM, been here bringing you some amazing content as always. And until next time, guys, make sure you slap a like on the video. Make sure you go and follow our amazing guest Owl, and just share and circulate all the amazing content, because there's so much to it, and we're willing and able to do even more. So keep us in the top of your thoughts, and just support the channel if you really like the content. That's all we can ask. Until next time, it's been your boy AMG Dens from the Stripping the Dipping podcast, and I'm out. Peace.